Welcome to the New School. I'm Stephanie Browner, the Dean of New School's Liberal Arts College, Eugene Lang, which is hosting tonight's event. The hallmark of Eugene Lang is rigor and relevance, which play out in the twin contexts of our open curriculum and our location and connections to New York City. Nowhere are these qualities more evident than in our newest major, Journalism+Design, which embodies the risk-taking and the experimental pedagogy that drives Lang's approach to the liberal arts. This program is very much the brainchild of its brilliant director, Heather Kaplan, who will tell you a bit more about our program. Welcome.
Thank you, Stephanie. I'm a little bit smaller. I know you don't really want to hear from me, so I'll be very quick, but I do have to tell you quickly that last week I was in conversation with Matt Thompson. I think some of you know him. He was with NPR, and now he's with The Atlantic, and I was talking to him about this panel. We were having this great conversation about it, and about halfway through, he kind of put his hand on his forehead, and he said, "Oh my God, what if the terrorists find out? They'll wipe out all of our best storytellers in one foul swoop. It'll be a national disaster." So, sorry guys, I didn't think about it. I guess like the president and vice president, I should have put you all on different stages. So very quickly, Journalism and Design is a brand new program where we're trying to overlap design methodologies on top of traditional journalistic practices, with the idea being that with journalism being in such flux, it's going to be as important for students to be experimental and innovative and forward-looking as it is for them to be skeptical, hard-nosed, and hard-hitting. We just started this year, and the outpouring of interest, both from students and the journalistic community, has been extraordinary. We feel like there is a there. And I cannot think of a better way to start our very first public programming than with these amazing people who have all agreed to come and spend their time. And I want to also thank the Knight Foundation, who is supporting us, and without them, none of this would be possible, and none of us would be here. So without further ado, let me introduce the people that are sitting in front of you. We have Sarah Koenig, host and executive producer of Serial and a staff producer of This American Life. Hello. We have Alex Bloomberg, who's the CEO of Gimlet Media and creator of the podcast Startup, former producer of This American Life, and co-founder of NPR's Planet Money. All the way to my left, we have Benjamin Walker, host of the podcast Theory of Everything and one of the founding members of Radiotopia. And we have Elise Spiegel, who I've known since I was 5, and I just mispronounced her name. Sorry. Also a founding producer of This American Life and co-host of the new hit series Invisibilia. And moderating this exciting event for us is David Carr, media columnist and cultural reporter for the New York Times and Lack Professor of Media Studies at Boston University. Thank you all so much for coming.
I'm here as your potted plant for the evening. These guys make some of the most compelling radio and podcasts in America. I listen to some of the most compelling and wonderful podcasts in America, so we have that much in common. Do you guys think that, and thanks to all of you for showing up, I would thank you from the bottom of my heart, but it's nasty out there. It's really good to be inside, isn't it? I mean, unbelievable. I'm interested in whether you guys think, and Sarah, you already warned me you're not going to take the bait on this one. Do you think podcasting is the best thing that ever happened to public radio, or the worst?
It's the best, for sure. I mean, it's this amazing opportunity for so many people that can create their own shows and connect with the number one thing, which is the best legacy from public media, which is the listener-supported content model. I mean, I think there are not a lot of successful examples of that, and public radio is probably the best one, and it's really, especially for Radiotopia and all the shows on our network, it's this amazing opportunity to do what public radio stations did, but on your own terms.
But you're not in public radio.
What's that?
But you're not in public radio.
I'm saying like so many of us have left public radio. a lot of us that are making podcasts, including a lot of the folks on your shows, have left public radio to start podcasts.
Well, but how is that good for?
I know. I feel like
I mean, if I
Oops.
if I have an antenna and I live on a tower,
Oh yeah,
I think
yeah.
we can
forgot
agree
about
that public
part.
radio is good for podcasting.
I was thinking for the listener. I was thinking for these people, it's a great thing.
It's good for public radio producers.
Yes.
And creators.
I think it's really. I started to get worried about it actually about a month ago. I was like, hey, wait a second, because it does seem like it has the potential to kind of like if people just go to podcasts that are, it could suck all of the attention out of the public radio system, and it could just silo everything.
but you're staying in the public
I am
radio
in the public
ecosystem
Yes.
as a matter of. They cut you a good deal, or you felt it was a good
I
opportunity?
was there already, inertia. I don't know. I mean, I was like, I was at NPR and they supported me for a year.
Do you want a job?
And what?
Do you want a job?
That's right. Yeah, I mean, actually, like the truth is that I really like public radio, and I like the radio part of public radio exactly for the reason, because I like the idea that you produce content that people can experience. Serendipity, just by accident, and I don't know, it might be that a podcasting audience can draw from people as broadly as a radio audience can, but it might not be that it might be that, podcasts have more narrow audiences, so you produce a podcast and people like you listen to your podcasts. And what I liked about radio really from the beginning was this feeling like, oh, I'm talking, and somebody who has absolutely nothing in common with me might hear what I have to say.
Yeah,
and
well,
that
I mean, part of what you got to wonder about is you have these verticals of interest, people self-selecting
Yeah.
based on the voice or the topic or the aesthetic. And then there's the village common, the great village common of public media, which is mostly crunchy liberal people, but it is a great village common, right? And so don't you guys worry about maybe the place where we all meet will go away?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I mean, I worry about that in life, though. I mean, I feel like what's happening in audio is the stuff that has happened in other media already, like it happened a decade ago. It happened to newspapers and it happened to TV, and there used to be 3 networks and now there's 500 channels, and a big audience in TV used to be 30 million and now a big audience is 5 million, which is what these guys get on a podcast. So I feel like and radio was protected from that because most listening happens in cars, and cars didn't update their technology, but now they are. So
Don't you think radio was public radio, storytelling radio was insulated by the fact that there was not much money in it? You know what I mean? Why disrupt something where there's not a lot of dough?
Right. Right. You mean why?
I wish I'd thought of that.
I mean, I know you're in a sort of a related business, but you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, let's disrupt cable. There's some real money there.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting question because it's also possible that there wasn't much dough in it because most of the place that it was happening was public radio, which is a nonprofit institution, and there isn't as much of an incentive to make a lot of dough inside that system. So I'm not sure. I don't know. What do you guys think about that? You're still in the system.
Why it was not disrupted early? Like
What-
why
or was the-
commercial interest? Are you saying like
Why
commercial
wasn't there
interest
much
didn't
dough?
swoop in because it's like, oh yeah, swoop in for the $3? Is that
Yeah.
is that like what you're saying? Is that?
Are you talking to me?
No, I was talking to David.
I don't know. I know. Oh, okay. Yeah. No, I know. I mean, I warned you backstage. Like, I don't know. Like the big question. Like, is this great for public radio? Or is it terrible for public radio? I'm still ruminating on that one, which I know was like 4 questions ago. But I feel like we don't know, right? I mean, I guess it depends on the metric. Like, it's a money question, right? And so how do we measure that? I mean, I worry about, but is it just like, do we have to just wait and see like, oh, are all these people are giving to podcasts, we're asking, depending on the funding model, right, but we're asking for money, we're getting the money in some cases, but are fewer people giving to public radio? That's what I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, like, if they're listening to Serial, and then they're listening to The Theory of Everything, and then they're not listening to their local station as they drive.
But do we know that? I don't.
Well,
How many people
but
out there-
That's the potential.
Yeah,
How many of
overall
you
listening
listen-
dropped a
Yeah.
little bit last year for the first time.
But
Say that again. What dropped?
Overall listening dropped a little bit.
For public radio.
First time ever. Yeah, for a long, long time.
Alex.
how many people in the what you, your
survey
audience is way
time.
bigger than my audience. Yeah, how many people out there listen to public radio? Raise your hands. And how many people listen to podcasts? So
Yeah, but this
There you go.
audience
But just
came,
said
like,
though, just-
podcast is in the title.
100% representative
This is
of
not
America,
a-
right?
this
This
is
is
not
a
a
cross
test
section
case.
of America. that
Yeah,
sits
but-
before us. This is absolutely.
But
this
just
is red
wait,
states,
though.
blue
Wait.
states.
If you asked that question 5 years ago, it'd be like, how many of you listen to public radio? All the hands go up. And then it'd be, how many of you ride unicorns in the wild?
Yeah.
I mean, there would have been a couple of hands, and people got, oh, I love
Okay,
that.
but can I ask
I
a
like that
different
Mark
question?
Maron guy.
Yeah.
Can I ask a different question, which is how many have stopped listening to public radio since they started listening to podcasts?
It's coming.
I mean,
Very many? That wasn't very many.
My consumption of public radio has gone down. Of the news shows goes down as I listen to more podcasts. If I am a measure of anything, which I'm probably not, but still.
Same.
I mean,
Yeah,
if you
so maybe it's
go
not so
ahead.
good.
No, same. I think that, you use the word disruption, which has happened with other media, but I think that when you look at what's so many of the exciting shows that are starting up with Gimlet, or even what like Slate is doing, or with Radiotopia, I think a lot of this energy comes from the fact that the institution of public media is just very risk averse. Like, they were not interested in pushing out, what was possible on air, and they've always been that way, and I think they always will be. So I think that these new opportunities are coming because the system just can't get it together to do it.
And I
But
also-
didn't Invisibilia take off like a rocket right away?
We're like 4 weeks old, but yeah, we're doing good. We're doing
Well,
good.
could you share some metrics with our?
We have, I think the last number was like 12. We have 12 million like downloads.
Holy shit!
I know. Good.
You're like a czar.
And then we have 300 stations, and it's interesting. Like the 300 stations.
Does your mom know that? It's
My
like
mom-
I lord over these 12 million people.
That's right. I'll call her up.
Lulu
And-
gets half, right?
Half of the
Half of the 12 million.
Yeah. No, we're doing good so far, but it's so hard. I find them. I mean, like it seems like the numbers seem fishy to me. I don't know. Maybe not. I just can't tell exactly what's going on.
Well, that's the public
Like,
radio thing where
like-
you're all like Eeyore. I don't know.
But
I guess it's okay.
If you believe the numbers.
12 million.
no. I'm just saying, anyway, forget it. Yes, the 12 million. Yeah, so 12 million so far. I think 12 million downloads, and then we're on 300 stations, and who knows?
Okay,
But
so
those numbers don't come in.
I still give money to WNYC, and so they're in the business of aggregating an audience, extracting revenues from that audience, leveraging sponsorships, or what would you call them in public radio? Yes?
Pledges?
No,
Pledge drives?
sponsorship.
Underwriting.
That's
No,
underwriting,
Not the
underwriting.
consumer side, underwriting. So they're in that business, whereas there's more flexibility in marketing terms in a podcast. I mean, you're
You calling me
doing.
a sellout?
No, I'm calling you a smart businessman. I mean, you can customize your commercials in charming ways, or what do we call them? Pre-roll, mid-roll.
Yeah. But I mean, I think there's definitely more flexibility, like to sell ads. You can actually call them ads, which you can't really call them in public radio, even though they're essentially function like ads. But you call them underwriting.
Does
Yeah.
Gimlet call them ads?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
They're advertising. Yeah, it's advertising. It's an advertising supported business. But I feel like there's lots and lots of excellent journalistic media that is advertising supported, New York Times included. Then I feel like that's a perfectly respectable business model. So to me the danger is in tricking people that like the ads are somehow the content and that you're not keeping it separate. And so what we go out of our way to do is make sure that, like, when you're listening to an ad, you know it's an ad, and then when you're listening to the content, you know it's the content.
Were you
Yeah.
stunned by your ability to just strip naked and jump over the fence and sell ads?
There was a weird moment, and where we like started bringing in revenue, and I found it weirdly intoxicating after 15 years in the not-for-profit sector. I was like, look, there's money coming into a bank account.
And I just say these words.
And yeah,
and
it was
comes.
really, yeah. I mean, so it was really, really. It is really. I mean, I was a little giddy when it happened. Yeah, it's really weird. Yeah.
You in startup, there's a few giddy moments around actual money, like when you get the first check, and it's just like, your wife is like,
Let's steal it.
"Is that real?
Let's steal it, right? You want to
Fuck it, let's
multiply
bolt. Let's grab the check and go."
Yeah, I know. It was really weird. It was really weird to think that like we raised. Yeah, I mean, we ended up raising $1.5 million, and which just felt like insane.
And no urge to leave town once that all came in.
It's not enough to leave town, really. Yeah, I mean, it's like not enough to risk. I mean, if it was like 10 million, maybe. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. You want to do a Series A?
One of the things I wonder about is, as a consumer, I feel like there's a different transaction underway, and I first noticed this with This American Life. When by the time they were sort of podcasting and into it deep, and when I think I called you when I was working on this story, and he said, I said I felt okay with sending Ira money, and you said to me, and I think this is smart, yeah, you just called him Ira, and so you feel like you have a relationship, right? And then there is the thing about I have a massive estate in upstate New York that takes 3.5 hours to get to, and I feel because I'm able to program and consume plus work back catalog. Like I was like, okay, I'm sold. You gave me something of value in a way that felt different than
radio?
Yes. Because
Because
I'm
you chose it.
the producer.
Yeah.
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 I mean, I think the reason. I mean, if you look, I think at public radio, I mean, it's all very hapless, and we act all like sort of money shy and like all mumbly and like apologizing for ourselves in public radio. I still consider myself part of public radio, obviously. By the way, I'm answering this question. But but I think if you actually look at the business model, public radio convinced 10% has for the past 30 years convinced 10% of their audience to stop the car and give, and donate money. And it's like $100 and something a year on average that most people do. 10% of the audience. And like once I started going out and raising money and saying I'm starting this media business and talking to investors, and I would say, yeah, and part of our business plan is that we're going to do this freemium model where we're going to ask some of our listeners to sort of support us and do it differently than public radio, but it's essentially the public radio model. People would say like, what's your conversion rate going to be? And I would say, I don't know, public radio is getting 10%. And they were like, 10%? Like in the venture world, you're lucky if you get 0.5% of people of people that do anything. And so I think that same, that bond that you feel with when you're listening, and I feel and everybody feels with the shows that they love, is I think is sort of built in, and that public radio was capitalizing on that for a long time. And if you think about what they did, they spread there's not been a dime spent on marketing in public radio since I've been there. They've never put a subway ad up, they've never did a big marketing campaign, and they got like 38 million people listening to them. So it's like it's pretty amazing actually what they accomplished. In an age when you literally had to go into your landline and call up a pledge volunteer and to make the transaction. It's sort of insane.
But my issue with that, and it's just a peeve of mine, is I'm happy to give the money. I don't want to give the data. I want to give when I want to give. And I don't want you to be like Jason in the hockey mask popping up. Hey, it's time to kick in again.
Right.
That's why anybody that has a PayPal button. Now you have on Theory of Everything, you have a donate now button, right?
Yeah, so through the Public Radio Exchange, which runs all of the Radiotopia podcasts, the donations has worked out very well. I mean, we just did a Kickstarter for the group. We wanted to raise $240,000, and we ended up raising $620,000 last November. And I think, again, I was just talking to someone at Kickstarter today. There have been over...
Well, it's like people can't give you enough money.
Yeah, which again I think goes back to what Alex was saying, that like they could have stopped. Like once the model is that once we had our funding, they kept giving, which again I think speaks to that bond of that 10% of your audience, which we're stealing. I think the podcasters that come from the public radio world are very much aware, at least us, especially with Radiotopia. I mean, we have underwriting and advertising as well, and we get some grant funding, and the donations working very, very, very well. But I think I just talked to someone at Kickstarter. There have been over 240 successful podcast-funded projects, which I would not have guessed that many. I would have guessed maybe, that's a lot.
You said you're stealing it, though? What are you stealing?
The model. I think we're sort of taking that model of listener support.
But I think that Kickstarter speaks to the intimacy of the medium. Is like, I know this guy. I know Sarah, even though I don't know her from a load of hay, but like she's been talking, and it's a very, it's like my friend Sarah, and there's something close.
I think I've gotten so many emails, even like letters, like through the mail system, that are.
Do they still do that?
They do, yeah.
That's weird.
And phone calls to my house phone, to my cell phone, like just like, hey,
That feels
Sarah,
a little
like they know,
close.
big, but it's like it's all very, and maybe that's just like the age we live in, but there is this thing where they assume we're friends, which is weird for me. I mean, I freak out a little bit, but then I'm like, right, that's what I'm going for. I mean, I did that.
Different than like when you were on This American Life?
Yes. Yeah. Very different.
Well, but
Because
it's
This American Life,
the chronicity of,
yeah.
you could say.
On behalf of the audience members who don't know that word, will you explain what you just said?
Meaning every week. Oh. And people listen to it when it dropped. And so it's just like Sarah. Not
It's more like Sarah.
Not, here's a Starlee Kine story. Oh, here's a Sarah story. Here's, you know what I mean?
Right. I don't think people felt like they knew. People feel like they know me. And maybe they do. I mean, they kind of do, in a way. I mean...
Well, you're going to love it right until they show up on your lawn, I think.
Cell phone call.
Ding.
Yeah. No, it's not that I love it, but I'm saying I hear you. Like, I think that it is... It's very intimate. It's intimate what happens when you listen, to mine, Serial happened to be a weekly thing, but if you listen to a backlog of any of it, if you do 3 episodes in a row of anything, you're in it. You're in this world. And I think it's intimate.
When we talked, I did a story a while ago, right when you were going for done, and you just said to me, it just feels like radio to me.
Right.
And then you kind of even step back from that. It kind of feels like newspapers, actually. It's like the same test. What do you guys think of that? Does it feel like radio?
I feel like it's different. I feel like the things that you can do in podcasting, like as a maker, I think that the potential is different. Like I feel like what I learned from you, which is like it can carry. I think we've all, like, working in the system, you have assumptions about how much detail can you give and how much, and where can you go. I think like Serial made me think differently about, people really can handle this amount of detail, and then there's this podcast called Strangers where Leah Tao did this Love Hurts series, which was unbelievably intimate. Like, it would never really get on the radio. And that made me think, oh, there are opportunities here to like for depth and like so like it feels like it's not like a new medium. It's like it feels like it's like an open. I feel like there is like we don't know yet what you can do with this medium. And there are some indications that you can do things that you clearly cannot do on radio, but I don't think that we haven't, like you could do a 3-hour story, and you're just really like, I'm doing a 3-hour story.
Well, can I change my answer? Because I feel like what I said to you then is not what I mean.
Really?
Yes.
She lied.
I lied back then. No, I didn't lie. No, I think what I meant when I said that was my job right now. You know, like I felt like a reporter for making Serial because I was a reporter. I just felt like I felt like a reporter, and so in that way, it didn't feel that different to me from reporting a This American Life story or a big newspaper story. Like it's the same process, and so now can I do my thing?
Please.
Okay, so
There's going to be real actual audio programming at this.
there's going to be.
We thought we'd
Well, they
spice it up.
asked us for clips, and then I did it
You
because
were a
they told
good
me
guest,
to,
and you put 'em in.
and then nobody else. Well, you have a clip.
I have a clip.
Oh, okay. So here's the thing that I will say that I do think. I think that we were really shocked by. I was very shocked by the response to Serial, like how big it be. Like a lot of people were listening, and we had no idea. Like we really had no idea, and I haven't really thought about too deeply, just because I don't know why, but also because I haven't really had there hasn't been enough distance to sort of figure out like why people responded to it. But I had one kind of very, I think, obvious thought about it, which is basically Elise's same thought. But I want to play a clip, not yet. To the AV people, wherever you are. Where are they? Up there? Oh, hi. So not quite yet. So I just want to set it up because I think it sort of speaks to the thing that I want to say. So the clip that I'm going to play is for those of you who haven't listened to the story on Serial, can I skip it? How do you want to listen? No, we were investigating a murder case. It was from 1999. I know there's some people here who don't know.
Is there anybody here who has not heard
There you
Serial?
go, front row.
Okay.
There, see, okay.
Right.
So you don't need to know a lot, but there's a murder case.
This guy over here thinks it's Cheerios. He thinks that's what you're talking about.
There's a murder case we're investigating, and it's an old case from 1999, and there was one witness in this case who said, the guy did it, and he told me, and I helped bury this body, and at a certain point in the police investigation, he takes the cops on the route that he says they drove that whole afternoon and evening. And so as part of the reporting that we did, Dana Chivis and I, who's right there, tried to recreate the route from some police notes that we had where this witness, whose name was Jay, was saying, like, you could see from the notes, it was like, we took a left on here, and then we drove there, and then we stopped here, and this was the time, and so we spent like hours and hours trying to figure out this route, and it just wasn't matching, like the times, and then we also had cell phone calls and cell towers that were supposed to match this route, and we couldn't get it to line up no matter what we were doing, and we were really tired and we were getting frustrated, and so then this is what happened in the tape. Now we can play it.
SK,
the one that's a...
Like, I'm trying to think of an analogy of like what the uselessness of what we're trying to do by recreating something that doesn't fit. It's like like trying to plot, the coordinates of someone's dream or something, where it's just like, but wait, that doesn't, like, as if we're going to be surprised every single time, but it's like, but it doesn't, because it's not.
There's a shrimp sale at the Crab Crib.
So, which is funny, right? It was funny. So like that piece of tape became a real thing. Like it became like a meme, and people made T-shirts, and like Dana became really famous, and like there are people like Halloween came, and it was like there's a shrimp sale at the and I feel like it's not that I would never have used that piece of tape in a This American Life Story or something, but I just feel like to me, what's super exciting about what we're doing, and I do think it's really different from working in newspapers or other kind of journalism that I've done, is because I feel like before I even became a reporter, I had internalized the rules of like, well, what does a newspaper story sound like and look like? And what's my voice in it? And the same thing, I worked for TV briefly, same thing, and then I worked for the radio show, and and I kind of like knew what a This American Life Story sounded like, and I tried to make that thing. And for podcasts, like I had not listened to any podcast. I did not know anything about podcasts. I really didn't. And so I didn't even know what it was, like what it should be, and I feel like it was extremely freeing, like for me, just me. And it's not that obviously like super creative stuff is being done in print and in magazines and newspapers and radio, obviously it is, but just for me personally, it was like, I was just like, oh, a podcast, who cares, try it, like what does it matter, it's a podcast, like nobody listens to podcasts.
Yeah, but
and so I'm just saying that openness is like what I hope we can keep. Like we don't have rules for how to advertise or how to distribute or what kind of thing to make or how long.
If you think about, there's various ways that ambition is expressing itself in this world, which is sort of format, yours. Mm-hmm. What are we talking about this week? Who knows, right? Off we go. 1984, the year, not the book. There's ambitions of the form, which is digressions, blind alleys, total MacGuffins, and you would like do stuff where it just kind of, that one had a little bit of a sizzle at the end, but
right.
Where it would just sort of peter out, and you'd go, huh, huh, know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or you can end up super personal, like the show you referenced. Or you can do a show like yours where it's like, this week we're going to talk about what a shitty boss I am.
Yeah.
I'm paraphrasing, of course.
No. Every week is some other way that I was shitty. It's true.
But
this week, how shitty I am at raising money, how shitty I am at naming my company.
But I feel like the ambition thing, I guess I'm trying to say is I feel like it's fed by the freedom that I felt doing a podcast, where I really felt
it's like a blank slate, and it doesn't, you don't know like what it'll bear, and it's like we're in this process of kind of discovering.
The gift is time,
not me
though.
Personally, but other people.
Is time.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's also like if you don't have to do it for such a broad audience, you can
like
talk
a teeny
about
little
the most intimate parts
12
of your,
million
right.
little head of a pin there.
But I do feel like this gets back to the nation of like, are we destroying public radio or not? And like I feel like if what we're talking about by public radio is like compelling audio programming, then no, we're saving it. If we're talking about like radio stations that are delivering a terrestrial signal to people in their cars, I don't know how long that's going to last. And I feel like the system, the type of programming that grew up around radio signals delivered to people in their cars was by necessity a certain type of programming, which was sort of like short, easily digestible. If you missed it, you didn't have to hear the thing that came before, and if you missed it, you could pick up on the thing that was coming next. And like that is what the great freedom is.
Although This American Life wasn't that.
Well, This American Life was like pretty weird and revolutionary in that it was the sort of the first appointment radio, really. And I mean, Garrison Keillor probably too, to a certain extent. But like that was that was the exception, not the rule. And in podcasting, that is the rule now. Like that you can, it's the fact that you can listen that anybody can listen anywhere at any time is like, that is the most freeing thing I think of all about it. And like, and that's what has created this great formal, thing. But the tools I feel like are,
This freedom though that Sarah was just talking about though, I don't see that happening at radio stations. I mean, that's the thing, or in the public radio system. That's
Elisa's is
sure. That's
public
this
radio.
is
I mean,
this, that is one.
Although
that
mine
is
isn't, like, honestly, like, mine is not as much of a departure as yours or yours is yours. Like, I am living by radio's rules. Like, there's no question that I am. And I
This is
feel
an hour
like
long, right? Like
it's an hour. It, like,
Yeah.
lives by all of the rules. It, like, in terms of, like, the expectations, in terms of, like, how quickly you have to move through stuff, in terms of attention, like, all of the radio rules. I live in a radio world. And, but, like, as a maker, I lust for the blankness, like the openness that you have available
Right.
to you.
But
and I wouldn't say, like, what I'm doing is not, I mean, like, I'm not taking advantage of all of the things that you guys have to take advantage of, because I also live on the radio.
yeah. I think the thing
Given
that-
your audience problems, you're obviously
might
totally
wanna rethink
screwing it up.
I think the thing that I mean, just to talk about it less as a business thing, which just for a second, and more of just like a personal making the thing. I think what's also cool about it is, I don't know, for me, like when I became a reporter, right, like you aspire to the New York Times, or you aspire to work for the Washington Post, or you aspire, if you want to do long form stuff, it's like, if I could get to the New Yorker, like that would, they're the masters of whatever form, right? And that's true across all of it. And there are none in podcasting now. And I feel like that's what, I just think it's super cool, like that some kid can just be like, I'm 20 and I'm going to make a podcast and let's see what happens. And I just think that I hope it doesn't get so big that we lose that. You know what I mean? Like, I worry that part will go away.
Do you ever think, though, it'll be like sort of the indie music scene where I think of, like, when you go to, like, South by Southwest, and you'll see a band that is just stone amazing. Like, you walk in and they're just like, wow, these guys are so good. They're so amazing. And you'll never get heard from again, that they're stuck in the clutter.
Oh.
There are a ton of, like, podcasts which can't generate audience like that. I mean, I think that's like that's most of them. I mean, like, do you have any sense of how, like, what the average podcast, what kind of audience the average podcast sees?
The numbers, do you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't. I mean, I think a lot of.
I think it's
podcasts are-
12 people counting the makers.
Yeah,
now.
no, I mean, it's like, I think,
I mean,
5.
Or 12 million, I
drop-off.
forgot.
And, like, the question is, like, and what is required to break through? Right now, we are piggybacking off of, like, large public radio shows, like except for you,
No,
who
only
made it
none.
on his
I mean-
own grit
Right.
and hard work. Otherwise, we're all just freeloaders, basically. And like, so like, once we kill the host, like, like, how do you build, But, like, I don't know. But
Then we're not gonna kill the host. We're feeding on the host's body, and then we will be stronger.
we'll be
the
hosts.
Yeah, like we're like, it's not like, we're like, what was that show? The one with the Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Okay.
But viable. I mean, I think like that 240 podcast that found an audience through Kickstarter. I mean, that's viable.
Yeah, but what are
That's
like,
kind of
how do you
an
break
amazing
through? I mean,
number,
like,
though.
like there is there's a question, like, how do you? I mean, and like, I went to, like, there's like a radio conference for radio dorks that I go to called, and we all probably do, Third Coast, and they brought up, like, okay, so you guys, like, go on these shows and then you get big audience, but how does, like, the average person do it? And I don't know. Is there like an example of a podcast that has built big audience? I guess there's, like, Earwolf. Like, the Earwolf people must have decent numbers.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can get to, like, the economics can be sustainable if you get to above 50, 75,000 listeners, which is a big audience, but that's like, it's not like It's not like I have to be to millions, you know? And like if, and then once you get that, then it sort of, then it does start to grow. Like I've talked to a lot of people who are in the 100,000 listener range, and you know, you can support a small operation on that.
Like who? Just out of curiosity.
Oh, you know, like there's tech bloggers, like the guy Marco Arment is I don't know if he's in the audience or whatever, but he's like he has a podcast, and it's called Accidental Tech Podcast. It has a niche audience of like Apple app programmers and other people, and it's got, you know, it's pretty popular, and he's pretty popular, but it's not like it's not like, you know, it's 100,000 maybe or something. I don't know the numbers, but like it's and he's, you know, making a good living. And I think, you know, I feel like when I first started this company, I was looking at what Roman was doing, and Roman was
founder for the first Radiotopia show.
Yeah, for Invisibility, I mean for
the other Invisible show.
99% Invisible.
The first one.
Yeah. But yeah, and I feel like that was like, you know, like it was a sustainable business. And I think there's a bunch, I mean, you know, there are people who are making a living doing this, and sort of, it's hard. I'm not saying it's like necessarily, you know, everybody go out and start a podcast, you're going to make millions. But it's like, but I do feel like it doesn't have to be, you don't have to get to the public radio size audiences to make a go of it.
Sometimes when I listen to your shows, maybe not yours so much, Benjamin, but the rest of you guys, I think, no Ira, no these guys, and that there's something about, it reminds me of sort of Spy magazine, where you all like met at this place and got shaped in a certain way with a certain aesthetic, and that turns out to scale. And
we got assigned a certain way of speaking.
Yes.
I mean, you guys did, not me.
Thanks,
I don't actually need glasses. No, that's true. I mean, that's totally true. I've never had another job in radio. I mean, I went from newspapers to This American Life. So I don't know how to do radio any other way. I mean, that's the way I was taught to do it. So I think that's absolute. I mean, for me, it's totally true.
But was it a community thing where a bunch of like-minded people gathered, or is Ira really the dark overlord of, you know, everything?
He's totally the dark overlord.
Yeah, I think he's definitely dark overlord.
No, yeah. I mean, I heard, though, I think we were attracted to it because, I mean, you made it, you started it, so you're different. But for me, I remember driving to like some horrible newspaper assignment that I had to do in like Upper New Hampshire about school funding and taxes. And like driving and hearing this thing on the radio, and it was just like, what is that? And whatever that is, that's where I want to work. Like that, that was so I was obviously, it's what I wanted to do. So that's where I tried to get to.
Yeah.
So it's not like, you know, you had to be predisposed for the dark overlord to infiltrate and.
But is there a This American Life aesthetic, and if so, what it is, or is there a best practice, or is there what are those values?
Well, I mean, I think it's very clear,
Yeah.
Like we all came from there. I learned everything I know from Ira. Like I wouldn't be who I was, or talk the way I am, or do the thing that I'm doing without Ira. But I think what he gave everybody was a theory of like how to engage people through audio. And like here are the things that you need, and
let's slow down on that, and let's just get into kind of the art of audio programming. So what, like, I mean, my voice is like the transmission falling out of a car, so I'm no big threat in radio, but in terms of like storytelling, what is the secret sauce?
What do you?
Vocal fry.
What's your
You
answer?
want to take it? I'll take it.
Vocal fry.
I'll start. I mean,
I know.
No, there's a lot of things. I'm being flooded with ideas. No, I feel like the things that I learned from from working at the radio show and from Ira in particular, were things I sort of half knew but were unarticulated, and suddenly like he was articulating them, and I was like, oh, right. So to me it was, there has to be something at stake, some sort of tension, right? Like you need a question or something has to happen over the course of the thing. There needs, an element of surprise in some way. It doesn't have to be a big, like, life-changing, earth-shattering thing, but just something that makes you stop or delights you or is shaped slightly differently than you thought. Something emotional. I mean, and not all our stories have that on the radio show, but that's kind of what when we're in story meetings talking about whether to do a story, these are the questions that come up. Is there something new to say about it? What are we asking? What's different about what we're asking than what other people may have reported about this thing? Who's the character? Is this person a good talker? I mean, that's a big one. Can they tell this story? Is it emotional? Do we care? Do you care? And sometimes like wonderful, fantastic stories that you would see in a newspaper, we kill them because they just don't have what is going to make it work for the radio.
And then on a basic level, like sort of like breaking it down, sort of what do you use to construct your story in audio? Like there's two basic building blocks, I feel like, and one is sort of what gets called at This American Life the anecdote, which is just like somebody telling a little story within your story. So the larger story is about how this person left the convent and became whatever, the CEO of something or whatever, and then it's made up of little stories about like the day I realized I wanted to leave the convent, and the first day I applied to the first day I showed up in my business school class or whatever. And it would start like, I remember the first day I showed up at my business school class. Like I walked into the room and I sat down and I looked up at the professor, and now everybody wants to know what happened next, because you're sort of hardwired to be listening to a narrative thing. And so that's one thing. And then the other thing that is like that are the building blocks of a compelling narrative are like moments of authentic emotion. And that's what you're really like. That's the other thing that an audio story needs above all, is like to have something that feels honest and not just like blah blah blah. And for example, if I could segue into my clip, but I mean, so that's like in my podcast Startup, which is about starting a business, which doesn't seem to be that emotional. Like that was one of the things that was surprising for me about it, was like how emotional it was, and not just sort of the stress and the anxiety, but also the moments of sort of like, humor. So the clip I'm going to play right now is where we had a this was the episode where we were naming our company. My co-founder Matt is in the audience, and we'd gone back and forth about trying to name our company, and we kept running into all these trademark issues with the name, and I had started with the American Podcasting Corporation, and nobody liked that, and Matt was really into names with tone in it, and I didn't like that, and then we were like going back and forth, and then somehow we got into this thing with like Esperanto, where we were going to name it a foreign language, and we're like Italian, French, and then we were like Esperanto. And so finally we had this whole afternoon, we were going through the Esperanto dictionary online, and I came home and I told my wife, Nazanin, that we had come up with a new name for the company. And now you can roll the clip.
Orello.
Orello? Orello. What is that supposed to mean?
Well, it's ear in Esperanto.
Oh my God. That's so dumb. That's so dumb. God.
You can turn it down.
So dumb, it's good though, right?
What I love about that is it's not just a lesson in how twee and dippy you and your partner could be, but it's also a lesson in marriage, because she's laughing at, not with. And she is really gonna just, oh. And I just love that you let her go and go and go. As only someone who loves us.
Yeah.
It's just like.
But that's also like, I feel like what's nice about that clip too is that like that's the thing. So imagine that scene in print.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, sure, it can work. It could work okay, but it's not that.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of like, that's the thing.
Yeah, and
that's
I
the
do.
cool
I
thing.
think that's why like there's so much juice around like podcasting right now. In part because it has that kind of emotion animating it, which is hard to get in print unless you're incredibly practiced, unless you can do your craft incredibly well.
Yeah, but there are a
Like-
lot
Yeah,
of
but
bad
no
radio
print
and podcast-
reporter anywhere could describe that laugh. It just has to unfurl
Yeah.
of its
But
own
they coulda-
accord.
they coulda
She's a good
accomplished-
laugher, by the way.
She is a good
No,
laugher.
but
Especially when it's
they
apt.
could, but like, yeah. But they could accomplish the kind of connection that you get when you listen to that clip. But I mean, like, I've been playing with this theory that like maybe part of the reason there's so much juice around podcasting now is because we're so inundated by text that, and like you just deal with it all the time. And so this is another way of getting information that's filled with kind of emotion. And it allows you to get the information in a different way and out in the world, and you don't have to, and you're not like married to a piece of text.
You're not
That's-
getting interrupted either.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
I think a lot of what happens is we're over text during the day to where it doesn't feel all that fun.
Yeah, to turn to it.
To read. It's like, you know, I've got the New Yorker, and I just read Jill Lepore's thing on the Wayback Machine. It's like the most amazing, breathtaking story ever. She makes, explains something super complicated beautifully. But I'm mostly, I've got 4 remotes, and it's just like, tell me a frickin' story. And that's all I want is a little me time. I don't want to, like, you know what I mean? It's just like, I have been staring at text since I got up.
Right.
All this shit is whooshing by me all the time. And it doesn't really feel like that much fun to read a bunch of long form right now.
Yeah. And I think that's part of the reason, like, there's juice in like, podcasting.
Yeah, 'cause you
because it gives you can throw a little banjo music under there, and you're, like, golden. Like,
Right.
like it's like you get everything that you want.
that's a line from Ira, by the way.
Yes.
I remember that.
But it's not just text. I think it's the screen too. I mean, think how many outlets and entities invested in online video over the last 4 years to do storytelling, and I don't think that worked as well either as, say, what's going on in podcasting. I think there's something about just being able to put your headphones on or just listen to it on your own terms without having to stare at some device.
Well, I want to, everybody's a bull on podcasting right now. But like, I don't know, 6 years ago, it's like, I just said, that's done, that's bricked. There's no searchability. I can't go in there and get precisely what I want. And so it's sort of this buy, not buy you, that there's a level of trust. And I turned out to be wrong. It doesn't have to be snackable. It doesn't have to be searchable. Like something in the need set just changed, or maybe people got searchability and snackability every other place, and they just want, I'm going to place myself in your capable hands and see where it goes.
But what do you mean? Like if you're, because I just did this in advance of this. I was like, I better listen to some more podcasts. I know, so I went on iTunes, I guess, or whatever you do, and no, right? That is what you do. That's what I did, and that's what I did, and I just
You
went,
are such a technologist. It's unbelievable.
and I just went by like stuff I kind of had already heard of, brands I already trusted, like Fresh Air, or stuff I already knew. And then like I took a chance on one that I hadn't heard of, but like the description was like, that seems like something that could be cool. Let's see what that is. But it was like I was already going with stuff I'd already heard of and knew. I don't know. So I mean, is it you do need? I don't know. It was hard because most of the time I was like, I don't know what this is. I don't know if it's going to be good, and I don't want to waste my time finding out. That's a little bit how I felt. Like I need someone else to tell me, like, oh, you got to listen to this thing. It's great.
Kind of what we're doing with Radiotopia is Roman calls it an indie label. So by having, we're using the cross promotion to sort of get, our star show to talk about other shows, but sort of like using that brand as a label to maybe to build on that. And I think it's been very, very successful. But yeah, the idea of being on my own in the podcast cesspool, or the big pool, that does sound very terrifying.
It wasn't terrifying, but it was.
I don't have to worry about it.
It does remind me of one other thing that should not work on radio that did work manifestly is like, well, let's take on the banking crisis. Let's do a big step back. And so you came up with Giant Pool of Money. And I would have told you, I was an editor for many years, and I actually used banjo music too before I ever heard, you got to put a little banjo music in there. I just want to point that out. We see it in print too.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I had Eddie Dean working for me. He was very good on the banjo music. But I would have told you
What does
that
banjo music mean in print? Because in radio it means literally
You hear the banjo music
You literally put banjo music under it.
under the
no,
talking.
it means be folky, go up the holler.
No, we literally.
We literally mean it's not a metaphor.
Take banjo music, you
Well,
get
maybe
it.
that's
So
just
my
how we
use is
heard
cooler.
What?
Your use is cooler.
Way cooler. Yeah.
His is right on the nose.
It's just
it's not a
descriptive.
metaphor. It's just
Yeah.
like
But like, if you had asked me, I would have told you, okay, that's a terrible idea.
Well, I did tell you that in a story meeting.
I wasn't sure. Yeah, it was
No, I remember when you guys pitched it, and I was like,
it's like, no, but
was
it's an
incredible.
hour on mortgage finance. Literally. And they were like,
and then
no.
I remember you played
Surprisingly.
it. I was like the
Did I
test
say
audience.
mortgage finance?
Mortgage finance.
I was the test audience at the end. Like I was one of the final edits. I remember because you were like, let's get the dumbest member of the staff to listen to this to see. And I was like, I don't get it. I don't get it. What's a tranche? Explain again.
Yeah.
But no, it was like incredible. I feel like, to me, in a way, the Giant Pool of Money, in a certain way, was like, I don't know, if for all of us, maybe not Benjamin, but like that, This American Life was the platform. In a way, though, I feel like the Giant Pool of Money kind of launched. It was like a podcast. Do you think because Planet Money grew out of that?
Correct.
And it only grew out of it because of Giant Pool of Money. I mean, Giant Pool of Money. Well, you should talk about how you got the idea. But it seemed to me as like, wait, you can do this, and you can do it in this way we hadn't really thought we could do. Let's give it a whirl. And I feel like that really launched a new way of thinking about it.
Yeah, definitely for me. I feel like once, because I had the same concerns that like I was obsessed with the housing crisis and I was reading all these crazy blogs, but I had no idea if you could tell the story on the radio and was it gonna have emotion and story and narrative and characters and all that stuff. And then once we were able to,
Do people know what we're talking about even?
Yeah,
Giant
yeah.
Pool of Money?
Know the Giant Pool of Money?
the giant.
If you've heard, have you heard it?
Have you not heard it? If anybody.
Well, that's
can get-
flattering.
Explain.
Yeah. It's just it was
I mean,
it was an hour of that we did in 2008 on the housing crisis, and it was a big hit at This American Life, and it was basically sort of we talked to everybody in the chain of mortgage craziness. So from the people who were getting the loans, and then the loans were being sold, and then sold up again all the way up to Wall Street. And we talked to the people on Wall Street, and we talked to the people who were getting the loans, and everybody in between.
I feel like you're underselling it. It was like the first piece of journalism about the housing crisis that most normal people understood. I feel like it was incredible.
Yeah.
It was so good.
I got to
It's
tell
so
you,
good.
as somebody who works at a newspaper company, has sunk enormous amount of resources into accountability reporting on that story, and we turned Pulitzer Prize winners loose on it. Gretchen Morgensen, all these amazing people. just so frustrating to me. It's like these bing bongs from public radio came in and just killed it.
It was great.
But it was, to me, it was really exciting to realize that like you could take this theory of engagement that I'd learned from Ira and apply it broadly to any topic. And that was the thing. And then once we started Planet
not
Money.
just any, but like a super dry topic.
A super dry topic,
where
right.
tape doesn't come to mind. It's not like, boy, we can get amazing tape if we just go to
If
like
we just get one
the
more central banker
offices
on.
of like,
Yeah, exactly.
But
You know,
that's
it's like-
that's the other thing. This is way off to the side, but you think of, you know what, guys, we're going to turn toward you in a moment. So please, absolutely queue up, and I'm sure you have better questions than me, and we'd love to have you asking some questions. But one of the things that I was surprised, you think of public radio and/or podcasting as super creamy, high production values. It's so good. And like a lot of your audio is super crappy. It was like archival.
is that thumb at me?
Really?
Or at him?
What?
Where's your thumb going? Is that to me?
It's to you. I
Oh.
mean, if you think of the court testimony, it's like, what did she just say? And I mean, you would warn people and say it's crappy audio, and then, I mean, you've got like, Skype calls or whatever they are.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like, what are these people even talking about? And so I always think to myself, well, it's very important that you have very high quality audio. Not if it's in service to the story.
Yeah, I think, I don't know.
Although the high quality audio can be nice. It can be nice.
Of course, you're a radio nerd.
know,
You got to
but
stand
like-
up for it.
I mean, it depends.
Are you guys really going to stiff me on the questions? I can't believe
Oh yeah.
we
They're like microphones.
we predicted that people are going to just flock up here and we'll never be able to get through them. Thank you for stepping into the breach, young lady. Go ahead, please.
So I have a question. Is this on? I can't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I listen to all of your shows. I love all of your shows. I feel like the reason I know about Serial is because of This American Life. The reason I know about Invisibilia, I feel like, is because of actually Radiolab. The reason I feel like I know about Gimlet is probably because of This American Life too. And I love startup, and I don't mean any disrespect, but I have to ask this question because it's driving me bananas. And I'm really curious. I mean, I feel like having sort of public radio and public radio offshoots promoting one another, cross-promoting one another makes a lot of sense. You guys were former producers on those shows and so on.
Yes.
But like Gimlet is a for-profit entity, and that is fundamentally different to me. And I still am gonna listen, and I'm probably gonna pay, but there's something to me that I'm not sure makes sense for Ira Glass to be telling me to listen to Gimlet and to listen to Startup. And I'm just obviously you have your own perspective, but I'm curious sort of what that is and how you guys who are sort of more in that public radio umbrella think about that. And when you think about other podcasts that are outside of This American Life former producers and so on, I mean, do they really have a shot if they're not being cross-promoted by the most popular and important shows?
So, I mean, I think first of all, on the question of should Ira be promoting or promoting a for-profit entity, the way I think about that is sort of like if there's a story that we think is really good and it's good enough that Ira would run it on his show, then that's great. Like there's no like Ira, we all know, will not do anybody. He wouldn't run anything because he's like, oh, I like that guy. Like the only reason he's gonna run it. Yeah.
Really though? I mean,
really, yeah.
You carried a lot of bananas for the elephant over the years. I mean, you did a lot of.
That's the name of my autobiography. Carried a lot of the bananas for that elephant. No, I mean, I don't know. Do you guys disagree? Like, I feel like, but I mean, the maybe you do, but the point is, to me, that I feel like is that like that happens a lot. Like there's documentaries, for-profit documentaries get featured. People who are writing books in the for-profit world get featured. All sorts of stuff gets featured on media all the time. and that I feel like the problem. So I feel like we're just sliding into that world. And on the for-profit side of things, I don't know. Like I feel like fundamentally we're not doing anything different than what I was doing on This American Life. Like I'm literally taking the lessons I learned from This American Life and trying to apply it more broadly to a wider range of stories and shows and programming. Like
Are you saying you as a consumer, it made you feel a little dirty?
It makes me feel different, and the thing is, you're not doing anything different except that you are making money from it, right? From the success of the show, you personally profit. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm
Right.
an MBA, I'm all about that. But it is fundamentally different than what is happening to the folks on This American Life and those in the public interest. And I just wonder how you think about that.
Just a sec though. His show could be in the public interest with a different business model. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, that was a question for me, was like when I decided to do this. So the reason that I wanted to start this company in the first place was because I felt like there's a world of programming out there, and I want to create a place where it can happen, where people can. I wanted to create an environment that was like This American Life that I felt like didn't exist that much, and I wanted to try to scale that environment and like have it be a place where other shows can launch, and that's what we've done so far, and I wanted to keep on doing it. People ask me, are you going to make it a not-for-profit or for-profit? And I wanted to make it a for-profit because I feel like we can be profitable. And like if we are profitable, that will allow us to grow. And if we can grow, then we can create more programming. And like and to me, it felt like if I was, and then to be a not-for-profit, like we would have had to sort of go and make the argument to whatever legal or tax board that is, that like we can't make a profit, and we're serving this particular public interest in this particular way, and it didn't feel honest to me. It felt like there are people that are literally, they don't have a business model, and they're doing really valuable work, and they can't support themselves other than through foundations and through other things. Well, and I thought we can actually support ourselves as a business and grow that business, and it felt like the right way to do it, sort of.
Yeah, but the other thing that happens with not-for-profit is like the people who started public radio, they were out to do something remarkable too. Mm-hmm. But they ended up with this huge Rube Goldberg apparatus over all of it, where somehow the stations can try, it's this weird federation. I mean, it's not a set of governance you would choose by any stretch. And that's sort of what happens in the .org world. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah.
I have two sort of linked questions. One is, since in this kind of spectrum, Benjamin would be the non-IRA one. I was wondering if you could. So he would be like the Vaselines, and you guys would be Nirvana, or if you guys. I mean, so in this particular moment, I was wondering if you could distinguish a bit, like either what you spun off from, and how what you're doing exists relative to the post-IRA galaxy. And then, but then the sort of linked question is, this seems like a really familiar kind of American cultural moment where this like wide open field gets discovered, and everyone's like, oh my God, we can do anything. So I guess my follow-up question to the Benjamin thing, if the rest of you guys would, is how does this get ruined?
I actually got an email from someone saying, hey, you're the only non-IRA person on this panel. But that said, I think that we're all in the IRA glass world. I've been working in public media since around 2000. Sarah Vowell was my boss in college, and I remember going through Chicago, and she played me the first tape when they had started. So, and I have a lot of friends who work on that show that still do and have worked on that show. But I think that even though I've not done something on the show, what he's done is sort of, again, talking about the risk-taking. I feel that that show has really been all about showing what's possible and what kind of new experiments, or shows like Giant Pool of Money, or even Serial as an experiment with a podcast. So I guess I kind of see myself, especially being as a public radio producer. But that said, I think with Radiotopia, we are trying different, at least when it comes to maybe business models, we're still a nonprofit, and we're still you know, like I mentioned the Kickstarter earlier, but yeah, I guess I would. I'm really answering that badly, but
Is there a difference in approach or style?
A different-
Your show or Radiotopia shows in general?
well, I mean, we're all different. I think all of the shows are different, but I think that, you know, coming back to some of the issues like what Alex brought up about authenticity, I think that's really the key. Like, that's what's so important for everyone doing this podcast. Is there's if that's not there, that it's just not working. I mean, you can be featured on the big banner on iTunes, or you can get, highlighted in another show. Those are great things, and those can really build audience. But if, you know, that authenticity, if that's not there, I just don't think it's going to work. So I think all of us, even though we're doing storytelling very differently, I think that we all have that. Like, all the ones that are in our collective definitely have that. And then the follow-up one, how do we ruin it?
How does it get ruined?
Ooh,
Well, we might ruin it ourselves. I mean, shouldn't be passive. I mean, I don't know. I feel like it's a little bit of a depressing question to contemplate. But I mean, I guess I would say again, like, the thing I hope for it is that the looseness stays there as it becomes more of a mainstream thing, if that's even a word to apply to it. I guess it is. Just like that I don't know, like, the spirit of the thing is cool right now, and it would be sad if people sort of like started worrying too much, and self-censoring and being like, no, we shouldn't try that because Serial already did a Serial, so we shouldn't do a Serial, or Startup already did a, like, let me start my business, so I'm not going to do, you know what I mean? Like, that to me would just be sad in terms of people trying to be ambitious and,
Less existential than what will ruin it, but what are some of the threats?
Well, if it kills the host, I don't know.
Yeah, WBEZ, which has been a font of
Yeah, if it
GBH, BUR, NYC.
I don't know. I don't know. Who knows? I mean, I don't know. I got no idea.
I think one thing that is a threat is that the numbers for some of the success on, like, Serial level success, which is just, mind-blowing. It's, that is millions upon millions of downloads. Whereas I also think that there's this 100,000 number that you brought up for, like, the other some of the podcasts, and I think that it's important to realize that there's a level of success, especially for building an audience 1 or 2 years in. If you can build an audience of even like 50,000, that's incredible. I mean, that's you're
doing great
to the races.
Yeah.
So
when we modeled, like, when we were building the company, we were modeling, like, sort of where we wanted to be, and we were hoping to be at 100,000 listeners by the end of year 2, I think, by the middle of year 2 or something like that. We were imagining we'd start out with like 25, 50, something like that.
And then Sarah came and ruined everything.
And then Sarah came and, like, lifted everybody's numbers like crazy. I think the thing that could ruin it, I mean, I don't think it'll get ruined. I think it'll get. I think it's probably going to start to look more like regular media. I would imagine it'll start to look more like TV, where more people will come in and they're going to come in and they're going to be like, oh my God, Serial was a hit, and now we're going to try to do a Serial, and most of them will be worse than the original Serial, and then somebody will come along and do a one that's just as good and in a whole different way, and then there will be 50,000.
Well, let's not get crazy.
Not just as good.
There's always,
almost as good.
There's always season 2.
Yeah, and
no pressure, Sarah. Thank you for your patience. Go ahead, please.
Thanks. So I was a former intern for Chicago Public Media for Vocalo, and I worked in community radio in Chicago for a few years, or I volunteered. And so the way that we modeled radio from my perspective and my colleagues' perspectives was that radio is a public service, and it served 2 main functions, and one was fostering a sense of community, particularly stations like Vocalo, which is primarily broadcast on Chicago's South Side. So places, and I'm also from Missouri, so places where people don't have access to internet or to cable news, and this is their main way of getting information. So that sense of community and also the sense of getting news when you can't otherwise. And one fear I have about the sort of podcast like silo effect that was mentioned is podcasts, you need these technologies to gain access to information. So to what extent do you think podcasts could potentially alienate some people in society, and to what extent could it actually foster a sense of community and better that public service mission of radio, or is it going to just drift away from that mission?
You mean from people who don't have access to smartphones and don't have the listening?
Right. There's that, but there's also like public radio is it's almost like a public good, like having access to utilities, having access to electricity or water. It's a way to get information when you can't access it otherwise because it's it's a radio.
Right. I mean, yeah. I think it's a. I mean, to me, I feel like there's a number of ways that you can be producing audio and reasons that you're producing audio, and I think what you're talking about, the community aspect of it, is something that I don't think podcasting can replace, and that's what I think that's sort of what I was talking about, where I feel like that is something that is like where it's actually a mission-driven, thing that you're doing that there might not be funding for otherwise. That feels to me like the actual. Then you need a mission-driven organization to provide that.
It made me your show, How It Unfurled, because it's partly real time, made me think. Well, if this is the future of audio, it's rather unevenly distributed because you had all that late breaking people that were, finally heard about this crazy radio reporter is like, you know what I mean? It took the nation by storm, except not all of the nation. You know what I mean? Like some of your important sources didn't come off the bench till the end. They didn't really know what you were doing, did they? Like you got
right.
more up calls at the end.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So I mean, I think it's a good. I don't have an answer, but I recognize the concern, and I feel like right. I mean, so for Serial, I would argue like, I don't know how many listeners we have, 60, however many downloads.
Billion.
64 million. 65 million total downloads. It's a lot of people. That's a community, And sure, that's one story.
It's a nation. That's a nation.
But it's a different. I'm not going to pretend it's the same kind of community, right? It's self-selecting in a certain way. We're not telling you to take shelter because there's a tornado coming to your town. You know what I mean? That said, like the thing and we need that. Like that has to keep existing in some way. And I don't know the answer. I mean, except that I hope I'm not assuming public radio is like dying in the next 10. Like that's not what I think will happen, based on no information whatsoever. But I don't think that will. I just don't think that will happen. But I would say, like for Serial, the thing that makes me happiest about season 1 is like I think there is a conversation now happening because I'm hearing about it from judges and prosecutors and defense attorneys and law schools all over the country and in England and and people are saying, oh my God, like we need to think about our system, and this is like a way to teach people about our system, and so that's to me a public good. But I know I'm not saying it's the same, but I also don't think just because we're podcasting and we're having fun and it's funny or whatever, it doesn't mean we don't necessarily have things to say to the public, and why not have, but I guess you're saying that it's the access is the issue. Is access an issue?
Well, right, it's not just access, but also the journalistic ethics part of, I'm not saying that you're doing anything unethical, but
I don't think
that
I work at a place that has a public spiritedness, but it's $1 billion company. I don't think those things are mutually exclusive. Thank you for standing by.
That's okay. I'm actually also interested in the question of community, but I guess in a slightly different way, in the sense that going back to that original conversation around public radio versus podcasting, I think part of what I've always appreciated with public radio, and I grew up in a household where that's what we listened to 100% of the time, although this was Radio National in Australia, so slightly different, but same concept, was that idea that you were listening to something as it was unfolding with thousands or tens of thousands of people at the same time. And I felt like what was really interesting about Serial was that in some ways it did capitalise on that idea of something still being current, as well as the sense of community, like a listening community in a way that other podcasts haven't. You know, like I've listened to This American Life for a very long time, but I would listen to episodes that were 5 or 10 years old because someone told me to, and then I'd pass on that same knowledge. Like, you should hear this episode. Serial, it wasn't like that. If you weren't listening to it within 24 hours, you were behind the times, like you were with, you know, like a television show that came out once a week. And so I guess my question is around how much are these ideas of currency and that listening community being talked about within the podcasting world, or, you know, public radio more generally?
I mean,
did you think about that when you were creating Serial, or was it
No.
like, oh, accidentally, this is amazing, we have these people? I went to a listening party for the final episode. I don't know, am I the only one who did this? Like, we all got together, we drank drinks, and we listened while we watched a Serial-themed slideshow. Seriously.
Well, you're pretty far out on Nerd Island right there.
Beg your pardon?
Wow.
I missed that.
Huh? You're pretty far out on Nerd Island. You were watching...
I'll
You were
take that,
watching
I'll
the
take
slideshow while it was going on. Just kind of set the mood.
it. It was exactly what it was.
Turn down the lights a little bit. And, I mean, but there was a whole ancillary industry that popped up around your show.
what do you mean?
Slate, whoever,
Oh.
everybody wanted a piece of the show. I mean,
Yeah, I mean-
you know, Reddit freaked out.
Yeah. I freaked out personally. No, I mean, I think, so, no, I don't think, I mean, Julie and Dana and everybody who made Serial is sitting right there, but like, I don't think we thought about, I didn't, maybe you guys were thinking more, but like I wasn't thinking about like what kind of community are we creating at all. I mean, we didn't know how many people would, obviously. I mean, we had no idea what the numbers would be, but I think it's a question now, for sure. I mean, and I think we'll think about it going forward. I think our numbers will be possibly smaller next time, but no, I think it's a good. I mean, I think it's a good thing to think about and to figure out. Do we want to engage it in a particular way, and if so, how and what's a responsible way, and what are the? I mean, there's an upside. There's also a downside, you know.
I think what you're asking about the time shifting thing is really interesting. I listened to Serial once in bed Thursday morning. It was kind of an excuse not to get up, but you know, because the show came out on Thursday mornings, and yeah, I think one of the last ones I actually just stayed in bed because I wanted to hear it right away on a Thursday morning. But you know, we're so used to talking about time shifting as the listener can listen whenever he or she wants. And I think what I feel one of the biggest takeaways I've gotten from the Serial story is that there's also this, you know, with the broadcast is Monday night. If you miss it on Monday, you've kind of missed it. Whereas now I feel in the podcast world, if you listen to it maybe Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, which is when it sort of almost is the same. It counts as almost the same as, you know, you're getting that immediacy, you're getting that cultural conversation, you're getting the issues talked about in a way that you're just not locked into listening to it when it goes on. And you know, there still is that excitement of appointments. Even, you know, I know I was not the only person in bed on Thursday morning.
That's what you tell yourself.
Yeah.
This is going to have to be our last one, I think. Are we about there, Heather? What time is it?
4 minutes.
Yeah, I would say so.
I'll be really fast. Actually,
You don't need to be super fast. It's public media. We can just set the mood. And
my question actually was related to the previous one. So sort of building on that, the thing that struck me about Serial was actually that as much as I have listened to This American Life or other kind of radio shows or podcasts, that this one was the first one that created or generated a very specific community online. And it seems like obviously the most important audience measure that you're thinking of now is downloads and listeners, because that's what radio and podcasting is built around. But when I first discovered the Reddit, I was like, this is genius. I honestly wondered if you guys had done it by design. Actually, that was one question that I had, was it by design? But it sounds like maybe it wasn't, because it was brilliant. The idea that
I didn't even know what Reddit was until. No, I didn't.
Yeah.
No, I'd heard about it with the Boston bomber thing. You know, I'd heard I knew there was this thing that had
Yeah.
happened, but no,
Well,
we
you
did
should
not.
do that
we had
again.
nothing
You guys
to do.
should run it next time.
Yeah.
But the idea that there is a specific space for people to convene and share insights or ideas and whatnot. But so my question was, like, how does that influence the way that you're thinking about audience development for the next show, or for any podcast that you guys are doing, thinking beyond downloads and listeners, but like to the community and how to amplify an audience for the stories that you're telling, but also to what extent it did shape. I mean, obviously you were getting tips and new information from the reporting perspective, but how much did the conversation shape the way that you even approached, the stories as you were building them from week to week?
Got it.
So, the Reddit thing was not something we anticipated or had anything to do with, really. So, I knew it was happening. We kind of dipped in, and I wasn't reading it. I mean, I just didn't have time, but also it freaked me out a lot.
Not all of it was very nice.
Yeah. So, so I'm getting all so we would dip in and just to make sure, and stuff would pop up and be like, you got to read this, you should look at this, and I mean, nothing that happened on there became part of the story. There was no information, I don't think, that we got from it really that changed how we thought about the actual reporting. I mean, I guess the thing that was good about it was realizing how closely people were listening, how closely. I know not everybody, obviously, but there was certainly a slice of the audience who was listening super carefully. And, they were making graphs and, pie charts and Excel spreadsheets and stuff. And so it made just me as a reporter, I mean, I'm a very careful reporter anyway, because I care about it, but also I'm sort of too scared not to be. I'm not somebody who likes to make an error public. But it just really reinforced we have to be so careful. We cannot mess up anything because we're being watched so closely. And I liked that. I mean, we were being careful anyway, but you know what I'm saying? It was a constant reminder of any mess up is going to be caught very quickly by this community that's watching very closely. I mean, I'm not somebody, I haven't been persuaded that crowdsourcing an investigation is a good idea by this. No, but I mean, a lot of people have been like, you should do, your next thing, and you should put it to the Redditors and see if they can solve it. And I was like, no.
That's a terrible idea.
It's a terrible. I think that, and so it's hard. I mean, I don't. I think there are creative, interesting ways that you could engage an online community. I don't know what they are myself. So other people may have better thoughts about it. I mean, I don't know what to say about that. It's hard because as a reporter, my thing was so much I'm responsible for all of this information, and it's my job to use it respectfully and correctly and fact check the crap out of every single thing I say, and that is not incumbent on the online community. So they're saying whatever the hell they want, and that's hard. It's hard. It was hard to see that. I felt, shit. They're saying things that I wouldn't say because I can't, and it's not right to say it. And I don't know how you stop. I don't know how you stop that from happening. It's a public forum; they can say whatever they want. I can't. But I also don't want to encourage stuff that I think is irresponsible. So I don't know the answer. I mean, I think it's really interesting. I think it can be like a wonderful force for good, but also, as I say, I mean, I think there's a side that I don't want to engage with.
I want to thank you, our esteemed audience members, very attentive bunch, wouldn't you say? They seem friendly and nice. Maybe they secretly hated us. Madam President, Heather, you guys put on a really good show. We're happy to be here, and I'm really, I took this thing because I just was excited to sit up here with the likes of you, and it was I'm serious, it's a deep honor to be with storytellers of your caliber, and I'm sure everybody here thinks so as well. Thanks.